by bringing your state in is part of the healing process. To say, I see you kind of in your own space right now, and we haven't connected in quite a while. And instead of like, don't you see what you're doing? Just say, I'm really feeling lonely and miss you right now. And I really could use some time with you. Or each time I notice that later, each time I notice when you're upset, you have a way of pushing me away. Can I help you understand how that impacts me? So that you are bringing yourself in it, not at the time when they're in that state, but at another time. So that's this other way of being able to bring your own, but you have to be aware of your own needs. Or if you're a therapist, being able to help them when they start going intellectual, you could just chase them and go into the intellect because that's what they're inviting you into, rather than to recognizing the different part of them. Part of them wants to go intellect because they feel vulnerable, but there's this other part of them that really has a deep need. And we need to be able to see both parts.
Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Building on decades of professional experience, this podcast tackles neurobiology, modern attachment, and more in an honest way that's helpful in healing humans. Your session begins now with Dr. Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott.
Hey, back in the studio with my co-conspirator, partner, co-host, and co-author, Ann Kelly.
Hello. This is the second one, 2 in a row.
I know.
We're having fun.
Super excited. So last time we did the wide scope angle and looked at using modern attachment neurobiology to understand what's happening globally or collectively in our communities. And now we're going to do a deeper, kind of more narrow focus and take one of the concepts in particular and expand on that. So this will be really good for clinicians especially, but also so many of you are so good at this material already that it'll make a lot of sense, and we will make sure that it makes sense. So people that are familiar with the model, it's going to be about the sunglasses.
Yes. We'll talk about the sunglasses as how we distort information. And we talk a lot about this in the book in specifics, but how we distort information is such a big deal. It's not a simple concept, is it? It impacts so much of how we relate to ourselves and the world. So how we portray it in our model is that when we're in our most secure selves, that means that we have access to all parts of our mind and wonderful bodies, and we're not overly activated, so we can have access to our prefrontal cortex, etc. So our glasses tend to be clear, means that we can see things much more accurately and clearly. Not perfectly, nobody's perfectly accurate, but much clearer.
Right, and we can see other people accurately, or more accurately at least. Like we can even see like, oh, I'm being a little defensive. That means your sunglasses are clear, meaning you're able to track yourself without a whole lot of information distortion that's still kind of green zone, and clear glasses.
And then as you activate up, and for long-time listeners, also feel very familiar. If you're just checking in, for a new time listener, what we mean by heading from the green zone of the spectrum to the red zone through different shades means that your sympathetic nervous system, your whole body is activating in a way that you become much more alert, hypervigilant. And we focus on this more about attachment related threats. And so we tend to see rejection higher. So our glasses become very red, where we have particular things, and I guess we'll get more in the details as we go, particular things, that information that we take in is distorted in a way that is around self-protection.
Yeah, the red being we move towards the threat. And then if we move the other direction and we go down towards blue, it means that we want to move, our bodies are wanting to move away from the relational threat, which looks like kind of zipping up, being a little more internal, maybe withdrawn. And then this is all gradiated, right? Can get more pronounced as it goes further down the spectrum. So as you move away from green, again, your sunglasses begin to darken and darken. I always like to think on the blue side of like aviator pilot sunglasses, that have mirrors on the front. It's like It's like, I'm not letting you see anything in my eyes whatsoever.
You know what I love about the mirrors is when we're in our blue zone, part of when we're in our distorting information, we are often not seeing anything, like you said, about ourselves, and we're reflecting it to be about other people. And so when they look at us, they can see their own reflection. And
Yeah,
that's what
which is what we're thinking, which is all we can see. We're not seeing ourselves. That's really good. We had an image one time, Anne, that had the blue sunglasses were those aviators, and they looked really cool. And then the red sunglasses were these kind of really oversized, kind of fashionable, cool red sunglasses, but they were really big, which sort of represents kind of this exaggeration or this amplification. And it didn't end up in the book, but we need to unearth those. But anyway, so that's the basic premise of the sunglasses. And the reason we put it in the framework was this is really important. Clinically, it's important in relationships because when you have your sunglasses on, when you're activated, from a neuroscience perspective, like this has been studied in fMRIs. We will link some of the studies for sure, because this is not an Ann and Sue idea. This is a real physiological difference that the information literally comes in and hits your body differently.
right. And you're searching for different information too. And so, what we will jump into right now is try to understand the information processing differences that we have so that you can learn to recognize it. Because the biggest sign is being able to go, oh, I'm actually distorting information here. This isn't actually fact, and how important it is. In the book, we bring you through some characters who kind of are able to show you how that comes alive and your ability to go, oh, I can see that I'm in this activated place. And honestly, just even recognizing that you have sunglasses on, or your child does, or your partner does, sometimes in and of itself can make a real difference.
I was laughing because you were saying like, "Oh, am I having information distortion?" I was like, "People don't talk like that, except us."
But we're trying to help them talk like that, right?
Well, so to me, here's how it shows up for me. It actually would show up like, because part of the way that the information is distorted, it's like this is where your internal working models show up. So this will be fun to kind of get into some of the more like details about this, right? It's hard because we don't ever talk about clinical cases. So let's just talk about ourselves. So let's just say if my internal working model, if my map, if my early history and general experience has been that people will ultimately leave me and they're going to disappoint me, it's just going to happen. And so I have to hold on a little bit of a red map. Then I'm going to be filling in that information. That's going to be part of the information distortion. So it means that I'm going to be noticing, I will typically read in more negativity to say, I mean, an easy example is like text. I'm going to be much more likely to misinterpret a text and also to try to communicate nonverbally, like by not responding, I'm actually communicating something, or by responding very quickly, I'm communicating something. In other words, the communication part is really high. So what that means is I'm attributing high relational value to our pace, our tone, the words that you choose, the emoticons that you choose, oh no, I only got one thumbs up, not two. Like I'm attributing a lot of emotional information to that. That's how it's going into my body. And then I'm responding to that. And it's going to tend to have a negative tinge.
By really believing that the information you're taking in is that, your whole body is going to then respond in kind, right? So if you're taking in the information, I think of maybe a good example, you're bringing up like somebody being highly activated in the red and over reading that, then maybe we're going to bring in somebody in the blue that they're relating to and how they might be interpreting it. And what happens is that one information distortion we can name is projection. We tend to read information based on our nervous system and our information processing distortions. And then, based on the information that is activating in our body, we project that onto other people. You're smiling.
Just because it's just so true. I mean, it's so true. It's happening all the time.
One piece of information is you send a text. So let's just say your body lives in the red. You'd lean in the red more than you do the other colors. So you tend to then process information, like Sue is saying, in that way of through this tinge of, it's not even always negative. It's also highly relational. Because you're relational, you see everything relationally. So it might not be even negative, like, oh, I'm sending this text and they're going to love this text because I love getting text. So there's a projection there, is because I love getting texts and I respond right away. That's the way they're going to respond. And then if they don't respond, we project on them what that means. That is an example. What we're wanting to talk about today is the live action of what information distortion looks like as it comes out. So you send a text and now you're waiting. I just sent that really sweet text and he's going to respond right away, or she's going to respond. And then 3 hours go by and you don't get a response. And now it's half a day and you haven't gotten a response. So then in the information distortion, with that lack of response, your body starts making up a narrative.
Well, you might not be distorting.
Good point. But you are projecting because you don't know. And that's one reason I really, in this conversation, I really do want to talk about the different ways we're taking in information in our society right now and how information biases are being amplified. Because you're right, you might not be over responding. You're not getting the text back. You're sitting there going, no, if I didn't get a text back. But if you over project relationality into their lack of responding, because if you sent a text, you're being very relational, and
or if I didn't respond to your text or to his text or whoever's it is in 3 hours or half a day, that would be communication. I would be that to mean something. And so I'm projecting into that person that they're meaning to neglect me or to ignore me or to.
Yeah, we're going to project meaning into that rather than being able to kind of contemplate and hold, when we're in our more secure selves, how they are and how they function and how they process relational information in the world. And if we forget that they also have sunglasses and maybe they're clear or maybe they're blue, if I send a text and I don't get a response and I'm hanging and I live a little bit more in the red, or maybe I'm just activated in this relationship more in the red and I'm not getting a response, I'm going to project all sorts of communication. Well, this means this. It has to mean that. She has to mean this. He has to mean that. And what we're wanting to highlight today is that projection in and of itself involves information distortion.
Another example of information distortion is transference. So what transference is like those early maps that are laid down. And so you can have a positive transference or a negative transference. But like projection, it is also information distortion. So, when you have a positive transference with someone, you attribute good things, like let's say your therapist forgets your appointment or something. If you have a positive transference, you fill in the blank and assume, oh, I must be at the wrong time. Or like you protect the relationship, which is still, it's information distortion in the sense, and to the degree that it's certain and that you're not reflecting on it or not knowing. So I just think the idea of thinking in terms of transference, in terms of projection as this neurological bias, that again, and it's related to state. Like you can kind of tell, like when somebody declares something as true, by the way that you handed me that bill, I can see that you're mad. Let's just say, just as a clinical example. Yes, I'm late with my payment and you're trying to shame me or whatever, right? So something comes in, I hand somebody the bill, which I don't, by the way, it's done differently, but I'm handing somebody the bill, story comes in. Based on the state that the person is in, neuroception, basically. Maybe I handed it to them rough, or maybe I had a look on my face.
Or maybe you feel guilty because you meant to they've asked for it 3 times.
No. See, now you're projecting yourself into my story. No, okay, here would be more realistic. I had forgotten to bill them for multiple sessions. And so I'm feeling guilty because all of a sudden they get this big sticker shock bill because of me.
That's a good one.
So they really do owe it, but it looks terrible.
But I mean, seriously, the point is that you would be having your own experience and your own expressions related to whatever's going on inside you. And you're handing them the bill with that expression. And now they're going to take in that information, but they're going to put their own information bias slant on it, depending on where their state is.
Well, exactly. Okay. So somebody with clear glasses would notice that I was a little squirrely handing them the bill, and then they could be curious about it. or like they might suddenly feel guilty because I'm being weird, but then catch that and like ask a question. You see what I'm saying? That like the actual thing does happen, but if you have your clear glasses on, that becomes fun. That's good therapy. Like you can just begin to make things of it. And that's what they say, grist for the mill. And we're curious about like, oh, wow, why would I be mad? And it's play a little bit. With information distortion happening, with this example, it would probably be more of the trait to the map. As the map, if my internal working model is really solidly blue, for example, well, if it was really blue, I wouldn't care that much about how you gave me the bill. I wouldn't notice, actually, right? Because I have my aviator glasses on. It's just a transactional thing. And especially if I try to talk about it or if I try to process it, it's just going to be annoying. And like, probably with the aviators, it's like, it'll be confusing or like, no, God, now I have to take care of you. What is it? Oh, I owe you $5 bazillion. No problem. Here, can we just get this done so that we don't have to talk about it?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Or I could also imagine sometimes it also could feel like an infraction done rather than being able to see you like this is an inconvenience to me. Sometimes when we're in the blue, we can land there as well.
What do you mean? Say more.
Well, just like if I live in the blue and I have particular ways of doing things, and the way you did it is an inconvenience to me, I might notice that in a less relational way and just more notice.
Oh, that's right. Kind of a gotcha.
Yeah, if I'm in a blue state, it's or if I live more in the blue, it may be like you're doing that is now an inconvenience to me, and it might be less relational still. It's still you're doing something to me. So there could be one how we distort the information there is either to ignore the emotional or relational part or to be sometimes overly self-protective about ways in which we do things. Those are both ways that we distort information when we're in the blue.
You said a subtle thing there of an infraction, because a lot of times on the blue side, again, think of the aviators and the pilot, there's this high sense of personal responsibility and value of personal which also then can translate into feeling their character being attacked or being a little brittle if they would distort information like a correction or somebody saying something of you're a bad person or it turns into a character thing when actually what you said wasn't actually a character attack. And I'm loving more and more the aviators because it gives the feeling really from both sides. If I have aviators on, it feels pretty good. I like them because they really are effective in hiding. And the whole point of the blue side is to avoid vulnerability, both the feeling of vulnerability in ourselves and in other people. Aviator sunglasses, it's perfect.
So let's talk a little bit more about how those aviator sunglasses, we are ready, but how they distort in the body. Like how does information literally get distorted? Because it can sound just like opinions or beliefs. And oftentimes we talk about things like, well, somebody that lives in the blue believes this or thinks this. But what we're really wanting to focus on today is that this is not a conscious process and that with aviator sunglasses, and you always describe them as dark, which I think is really good. If we live in the blue, we really actually do miss very important relational information.
Yeah, this is from the fMRI studies and things like that.
Right. It's not a conscious choice. It's not like I don't care, right? It's more about my body. If we think about, you mentioned, if you're a new listener, internal working models is the narrative that we have based on our early attachment experiences and experiences that have come forward. That's just a very quick summary. But if we live more in a dismissing, which is what we call blue, if we live more there in our attachment processes, it's likely that we had to rely on ourselves because we didn't have that consistent nurturing. And sometimes we might have gotten the information that the less we attune to our emotions, the closer we keep people in our lives. And so if I was brought up in an environment where nurturance and attunement wasn't readily available to me, and instead, the less I experienced my intense emotions, the closer people stayed with me. So if I had intense emotions and I got pushed away or rejected or not responded to, that is a very threatening experience in our body. Our wiring will shift to say, oh, we're learning machines, especially as neonates and infants. what in my environment and how do I engage is going to keep me with the closest proximity and care. And if I learn I need to cut emotions off, if I don't have as much emotions, I get more proximity. Well, my nervous system learns to feel the threat of my emotions or the threat of somebody else's emotions is not safe. And so we really do start to cut off access to those kind of normal parts of our perceptive system in order to tune down those kind of emotions.
You're reminding us that sunglasses aren't to keep people away, which is what they look like, and probably what consciously that the person, the adult, might think. But the sunglasses, where they came from, actually was that strategy kept their people as close as possible. So that's a big one.
Well, it kept those people close, but it also kept their body from being overstimulated. And I think that's really important because when you have a lot of emotional needs and they're not getting met, it feels very threatening to the nervous system. It produces a lot of cortisol. It's very, very painful. And this is before we have words to describe that. And that feels threatening to our nervous system. So we will learn pathways to not feel that activation. So we tune out a sign of people not being there. We tune out, and so that our whole body acclimates to that. And so we don't tune into that information. We really have less access as we grow up as adults. We're not seeing the emotional stimulate. We might pick up the emotional expressions less of other people.
Right. And some of the research shows that often with folks that kind of lean blue, emotions, like everything you're saying, yes. And very specifically, if the child was playing happily, then they did have access to their parent. The parent was right there. But it was more when they would get fussy. There were specific things. Unlike on the red side, fussiness got you attention. On the blue side, fussiness, makes you alone. Fussiness equals aloneness. So you learn very quickly not only to either play quietly or whatever, you basically bypass it. You don't even feel it. And as Anne's saying, then when other people, you grow up and then other people are more free with their feelings, then that registers as threat inside of you. And then just to add one other little layer is like, okay, so I'm fine on my own. I'm kind of have my feelings managed. I have you at the right distance closeness. But let's say something does go wrong. Now, normally one would hopefully be able to lean on people. But depending again on the internal working map, on the sunglasses, how and the state, what color that I'm in, how blue that I'm in, your presence might be more threatening to me if I'm upset. It'll register as more threatening, going all the way back to if I was fussy or upset or mad or angry, I lost people. So now all of a sudden you're here. Now I'm going to have to take care of you and make sure you're okay so that you'll go on so that I can be alone with my pain.
That's such a great example because like the individual that may be wanting, if you're with somebody that lives more in a secure place, whose body has the privilege of being taught that they could find people and somebody would be there for them, which
This
is
healthy
such a
entitlement.
yeah. Or if you're in more of a preoccupied state where you highly value relationships, but you don't trust them to be there, both of those models might be set up of if somebody's in distress, I should go and provide care. So if I go to provide care to somebody who lives in the blue and they actually reject us, right? And say, get away. That can be a really painful piece of information that we could distort as about us. They don't want us, or they don't care, or more importantly, they don't need care and support. Because somebody that lives in the blue could really communicate without even knowing it that they have all these ways of saying, I don't need you. And yet they do. And so when you really tap more deeply into somebody who lives in the blue and they're able to feel safe enough to open up, they can feel how much they actually really do want it, but it could activate shame in them. Because a child who has the want but doesn't get it actually internalizes a lot of shame that is undercurrent there. So to be able to have this sense of emotions and somebody seeing it actually can feel more threatening, like you were pointing out. But if we think about the information distortion, then somebody coming at them, instead of it being loving and warming, is judging. They see them as needy. So you can see how the information starts to get distorted and how we project on each other. And if I live in the red and I come towards you and you like, get away, then I can like, oh, you don't care about me, or you think I'm too much, or I could make it all about me because of my body and my internal distortions. That if somebody pushes me away, it's because of me. I did it wrong.
There are a lot of things in life that you can and should compromise on, but mental health care is not one of them. Rather than thinking it's impossible to find a psychiatrist near you, or an available therapist that takes your insurance, or a primary care physician with openings, check out ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and a website where you can search and compare hundreds of types of highly rated in-network doctors, including mental health providers, and instantly book appointments with them online. You can search by location, availability, and insurance. So literally no compromises here because you've got more options than you would have ever imagined. You can find mental health providers who offer in-person appointments, virtual visits, or both, whatever works for you. The insurance they take and their fees are transparent. They're listed right there. Most importantly, you can get real patient reviews to get a feel for the person before you commit to setting that first appointment. And here's the thing. The typical wait time you see a mental health provider booked on ZocDoc is just 4 days. That's it. Sometimes you can even score same-day appointments. Remember, it's not just therapists. You can find dentists and every other kind of physician that you can think of. So whatever that ache and pain is that's bothering you and you know you need to handle, ZocDoc is your go-to. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/TU. ZocDoc.com/TU. It's free. It's easy. Go for it. So we want to be able to help you understand when your person, you can see their aviator sunglasses. The aviator sunglasses, if you can visualize them, reminds you that it's not personal. And it reminds you that they're kind of not trapped behind them, so to speak, but kind of that, like, in other words, to see beyond the presentation of the toughness and the stoicism, and that they may not be able to receive you and to receive your care and comforts, especially the way you want to give it, like a big hug and let's talk, sit down and talk, honey, or, no, probably not going to fly, especially if they're activated. So if we can recognize their sunglasses, then it will help us, like, okay, what can they tolerate? Maybe I'll just sit quietly with them. Maybe I will ask them, hey, would you mind if I, like that? It's a different approach. We're not going to project what we would do if we were upset. We're going to be able to hold that with our clear lens, recognize their lens, and then be able to respond more in a way that they can catch. And in doing that, then you're going to help them move more to the green and their sunglasses lighten. Maybe they come up to the top of their head.
And this is the part of the healing journey, isn't it? Whether you are a therapist with a client or you're listening to this and you're recognizing that you're engaged with a lot of a blue partner, that person still needs that warmth and that connection.
They especially need it because they don't naturally evoke it.
Even if they don't know it. And it's so easy as a therapist, because that person might not tune to those emotions or might move over them real fast and then get back into the intellect to start asking you lots of questions. I don't know why, because when and get really rational with you all of a sudden.
Stop talking about me.
and then it's really hard to help them have a state-based change. You just saw that emotional vulnerability in them. And then if we follow their distortion, and it's kind of like, how do you find that balance, right? If you just trust them and say, oh, they don't need any help, and you just go with their intellect and you ignore it, you're not able to help their nervous system. And that is what you were mentioning before that I was cueing into about, we want to really approach them in what feels in their body safe, but not just leave it there.
Totally. And if your glasses are clear and your person has big old thick aviator sunglasses on and they're not moving, so initially it's like, oh, then you're able to respond to their sunglasses. But if your glasses are clear, you're also aware of your own body and your own needs, and maybe your irritation or your hurt or this feeling of neglect. And that is just as important and will be just as regulatory So you might not have it to give to go chase them down or to go seduce them out. And it's not your job. We're not saying it's your job by any stretch. And so what's the beauty of this secure state and the clear sunglasses is that ventral vagal green zone secure state that we're talking about is that yeah, you can be very responsive to the people around you and their different states, but you're also equally responsive to your own battery, your own needs, your own wishes, your own frustrations. Like that matters too. I know that sometimes we get pushback because when we're saying like, hey, if you're in a higher regulated state, why is it always me that has to go get the people that aren't?
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, and I think by not actually believing them or just like, "I'm sick of trying, so I'm just gonna go off and quit going to get them," I think what you're saying is really, really important, and that is by bringing your state in is part of the healing process to say, "I see you kind of in your own space right now, and we haven't connected in quite a while," and instead of like, "Don't you see what you're doing?" Just say, "I'm really feeling lonely and miss you right now, and I really could use some time with you." Or each time I notice that later, each time I notice when you're upset, you have a way of pushing me away. Can I help you understand how that impacts me so that you are bringing yourself in it, not at the time when they're in that state, but at another time? So that's this other way of being able to bring your own, but you have to be aware of your own needs. Or if you're a therapist, being able to help them when they start going intellectual, you could just chase them and go into the intellect because that's what they're inviting you into rather than to recognizing the different part of them. Part of them wants to go intellect because they feel vulnerable. But there's this other part of them that really has a deep need. And we need to be able to see both parts.
Another add-on to this, the gift of when we're in our secure state and with our sunglasses, clear glasses, I keep saying, that when we do see the person with their glasses on, we'll be more likely to have an empathic response because we're actually seeing their stoicism or the withdrawal as about them. And it'll be less triggering. It'll feel less neglectful. It still might be neglectful, but when it's less personalized, you're actually going to probably have more bandwidth to have different responses, but still the notion of, yeah, but if that's too much and if you need it, you need it. And then flipping over to the red side with the big red sunglasses and things become bigger and they're not exaggerating. They're not just being dramatic to be dramatic, or we aren't when we are in that state. We actually are feeling things that big and really reading things in that way.
Right. And that again is really supported in research. Like if those that have learned to kind of live more in a preoccupied way really do have more vigilance and awareness, they see more emotional content in things. They pick up more emotional expressions than the average individual. So it isn't like they've learned. And again, let's get back as we did with the blue, that this is early learning that's impacted the neurological wiring of somebody so that they have different parts of their mind and body that are going to activate quicker and stronger than somebody that lives in the blue or even than somebody that lives in the green.
That's right. And another part of those findings were that, oh man, I can relate to this. They remember details for a long time and in extreme detail, and probably are right because they are attending to the because of their preoccupation. And on the blue, if you do happen to pick up the relational information and it doesn't store very long. It's not very, again, not very accurate, not very detailed. There's not a lot of salience to it. So it's not just in the moment, but it's also even going forward. It amplifies the story that is being enacted because if I'm in red and I'm feeling it stronger, I'm remembering it in more detail. You're not remembering it. I'm feeling neglected. Like all of that is real and it aggravates or deepens those grooves of the internal working model.
You've brought up a few times the story, and for those that are possibly new listeners, how we mean like when we pick up information in our world, we have to make a narrative story, make a narrative story about it. And the thing that's interesting is that the information we pick in dictates our story, but it is also true that our story can impact the way that our nervous system responds. So the narrative or the story is a place for you as an individual or you as a therapist to be able to intervene. But that isn't this place of saying, no, you're wrong. You didn't pick that up. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. Right. We don't change somebody's story by defending ourselves or telling them that their story's wrong. Right.
No, totally. As a matter of fact, this is where I was almost going to go earlier. When I really think about my own example, where that I've begun to kind of cool off my jets sometimes, is that like I have certain kind of things that I say in my own brain. And when those start running, then to me, I've learned that that's a clue to slow down. Like, again, we've talked about certainty, to not be so certain. Like, what are other possibilities that cause this thing that I'm upset about? What is the other person's perspective? And I imagine, again, as you're listening, what are your go-to stories? I mean, when you're upset, is it in the direction of neglect? People leave you, people disappoint you, that you're more into it than they are, you're going to be let down. Like, if that's kind of the notes that get hit, then if you are in a live situation and you're like, see, I knew she didn't like me, I knew it. Then as soon as you say that, it's like, okay, wait, that's a little too familiar. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying to slow down, and that's possible. But even if you're right, you're probably feeling it at an 8 when maybe it's a 4. So just you knowing that, like, okay, and you've done this with me before, Anne, of like, I have one about being left out, being like people not being interested, well, why did they text you and not me too? And you know what I mean? And what I'll fill in is like, well, that's because you're nicer and more pleasant. And so then therefore, they're wanting to form more of a relationship with you than me. Right. Like I have my own story that probably you had texted them first and they're just texting you back or something. Right. So that's a familiar story for me. And so that's one you've even said before. It's like, okay, we know you do that. It's probably not personal, or maybe it's a little personal, but that can be okay too.
That's such a great example, though, since you're going to be vulnerable with that one. I want to join you. I want to match you in that vulnerability. We have the information biases based on our early attachment history, but we also have information biases based on our moment and state. And those get interwoven, right? That's a lot of our book. But in this situation, if I'm not in my more secure place and you say, why they text you, not them, me, and I don't like you being upset or disappointed with them.
And you'll also read, if I ask a question, like, well, I'm not included in that group text.
Where I could project into that you're upset and you're upset. Like, I mean, intellectually, I know you're not upset with me because I'm not the one you didn't text, right? But that you're upset and that somebody's done something like, I guess the point is, if I'm not on my more secure self, I'm going to respond with clouded glasses and like, oh, it's not okay that you're upset. You're feeling, I'm going to project too much information in that statement because here's the thing, like, I'm not likely to feel that as much.
Right. You're not. That is really true. You do not.
Yeah. Like that's just not how it hits my body. So since it doesn't hit my body and it's hitting yours, then I think, oh, I've got to fix that. I just got to rationally tell you that. Why are you thinking that? That makes no sense. And that's my own projection onto you. And I'm not seeing you.
Right. You're trying to convince me not to feel the way that you think I feel. You're trying to fix a problem. And even if I am feeling it, I'm not necessarily wanting you to fix it. But sometimes it really is like I ask questions like, I wonder why, And so yes, that's there, but it's not necessarily that I'm yet butthurt about that. What I'm doing is I'm investigating if I should be butthurt about that. But even that investigation, even the word investigation, right, can hit you as like, oh, okay, I might be upset.
Oh, it definitely does. I think I learned that the first person that ever taught me the idea that questions are threatening neurologically to our body is Stan Tatkin. I can remember like this light bulb going on when I was getting trained by him, but that this idea that people do perceive questions in an accusatory way, even though it's not mean it. So if you're asking me questions, my body goes, this is bad. I've done something wrong. Or somebody's done something wrong. We got to fix this. And so it's a great example of all this information distortion. And instead of, I think I have improved of my ability to go, okay, wait, you were mentioning where I've gotten now. And I can say, oh, you tend to do that. What do you think? And I don't feel as activated, but when I did or when I do, then I get defensive or I try to fix it. And so I guess it's a perfect example about how much our information pulls in, our biases pull in, and then we're responding. And let's get back to the body. We're responding to our body's sense of threat rather than tending to what our body is really saying and needing.
Right. And aggravating each other because I really am just looking for information. And that's a way that I cope, right? As kind of a blue leaning person is like, I need data so that I can figure out how I'm supposed to feel. So it is a little bit more neutral in some ways. It's like, I really am, it's obnoxious. It's like, you know what I mean? I end up interrogating or something. So if you were to say, oh, that's really weird, yeah, she always leaves you off of these group texts. I wonder what that's about.
Our friends are going to wonder who she's talking about.
No, I'm really
We're
not
making
gonna do a
this up.
special thing.
Right, right,
But if
right.
you even just responded with, "Oh, that is weird. I don't think she likes you very much." If you said that, I would be calm. I would be like, "Yeah, I don't think so either." Because to me, I'm looking for reality. And so if you were to just respond in this really neutral, like, "That's really weird, that's kinda weird she didn't do," or whatever, something whatever I'm feeling, and that you actually are experiencing it that way, that's a reality thing that I'm like, "Oh, now we're together trying to puzzle on this problem," versus when you're like, "No, she's fine. She loves you. Blah, blah, blah." Then it's confusing to me, and so it's not settling, and so you're trying to settle me, and then I'm being more unsettled by your response, and then I'm being unsettling to you because I get more upset. So it's a great crazy eight of nobody's doing anything wrong, nobody's a bad guy.
Yeah. And so if we slow frame that a little bit and kind of open it up to other people's experience that you can relate to this crazy eight, because I don't know, like everybody has a crazy eight, whether it's with their partner or their child or their sister, you get in these loops of misinterpreting and then they're repetitive and predictable. So in this process, if like I'm helping myself through this journey together of putting a little bit clearer lens on, and then I can feel the discomfort of your questions, and I could feel the discomfort that maybe you feel, you know, rejected. And I can feel even what I'm feeling now is like, I don't have anybody that doesn't like you. You're right. So like, I couldn't do that.
Can y'all hear she's taking care of me even now?
It's true.
And earlier she was taking care of any of our friends that might be listening. Like, this is y'all, this isn't our friends, that she's not talking about y'all.
So if I'm all caught up in that need for everyone to feel okay, then I'm not responding with my clear glasses. If I can experience my own discomfort, find my own curiosity, maybe laugh at myself about needing to like jump in, or like, oh, actually Sue asked a lot of questions when she has uncertainty, and I can like feel the initial discomfort because that wouldn't cross my mind. I mean, honestly, like that's the information thing that wouldn't cross my mind. So when you're asking that question, if I could go, oh wait, let me put Sue's vision on this, and then I can ask you, oh yeah, like we can talk about it in a much more robust way. I can look at my own
Or
glasses.
you could even ask me, if because the questions might be obnoxious or a little interrogating. So it might be more like, what are you feeling? So that you could help me, guide me into like something that might be more relational with you rather than me just gathering information, gathering data. I'm a little insecure that so and so doesn't let.
So getting into the body, and it's like, are you feeling curious, or are you feeling like, what is going on for you and what's going on for me that I want to jump in? So I guess the process of us talking about recognizing information biases that we do, the projections, the transferences, is that it's not to quit doing them. Yes, the more securely we can relate, the clearer our vision is. That is actually factually true. If in a research framework, if we charged you all up and then, with depressing or angry thoughts and gave you a neutral list with equal anger and equal neutral or positive words, and we say, memorize them, you're going to remember more of the angry words. Just most people would, because we're primed. That's a prime, that we will distort information through a prime. It's not that we're not going to do it, is my point. It's that the more we can be aware of our own particular types of distortions and our own particular glasses, then the more we can imagine having them, or like going, okay, wait, this is what I'm doing. And let me go to my body first. I think that's our goal, right? Is like, how do we check into the activation that information is doing in your body? Because there's so much information to be told by you tuning into self and the activation in yourself. And we ignore that so often. We believe our narrative, we believe our story, and we're acting on it. We're chasing that person down who didn't text us, and we're believing they rejected us rather than going, okay, I tend to overuse this information to see it. And if I stop to think about him or her, they really rarely like to touch their phone.
I could chase them down and talk with them about it. Or, maybe this person and I are not a great fit and then they really are a little neglectful and they maybe are a little narcissistic. And I'm always the one that's reaching out. And so by me noticing that it just kind of perpetually doesn't feel very good. So it's not necessarily about fixing it. It's also like going back to that. I might need higher contact or I might need something different. And then I can hold myself in a more secure way and surround myself with people that do that or talk with them about that I need that versus just convincing myself or getting reassured. It's like, well,
Or just ignoring that
it's
you
not
have
just
that
that I need
need.
reassurance. It might be that I need closer holding. So we've done this whole little mini therapy session for you. So we should bill each other for that. But was there anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's good. I guess what I'm thinking is there's so many different ways that we tend to distort information that I think it's a kind of a fun, exciting way to notice it. And I want to invite people to be curious and really relax and open about it because it can really help you see the world through a whole different lens when you start recognizing
Lens, dun dun.
it.
So you can hear Anne's passion about this, and we both have passion about this, which is part of why we really want to encourage you to get the book, come to our book launch party, May 1, 2024, 6 p.m., and join with all the cool attachment people that have, so many of them that have been on the podcast, all in one place. It'll be a historic moment. And securerelatingbook.com and therapistsuncensored.com/launch to be able to attend the meeting with these cool people. Thank you so much for listening to our domestic conversation. We hope that you find value in it. And if you do, please do leave us a rating and review and let us know.
That helps other people find us. All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you around the bend.
Therapist Uncensored is Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott. This podcast is edited by Jack Anderson.